Can you start off by sharing when exactly you were at Amazon and high level your career progression getting to principal engineer at the company?
I started in 2006 as a contractor software support engineer, turned to Blue Badge 9 months later, and then became SDE1 at the end of 2007. I just got promoted to SDE2, I believe around the 2009 timeframe, something like that. Maybe 2008. And then I was promoted to senior engineer in 2012. I was promoted to principal engineer in 2020, and I left the company just recently in March of this year. So about 3, 4 months ago.
Yeah, so you are clearly an Amazon veteran. I'm sure you have tons of insight about how the company operates. Let's start with what did you like about Amazon?
Really appreciated a couple of things. One is the writing culture. I think it's one of Amazon's superpowers. A lot of companies sort of use presentations and other things to sort of guide meetings. Jeff Bezos was very adamant that we use like the 6-page memo as the default document format. And I think the wonderful thing about it is about writing in general is that you can't hide behind fancy animations or graphs. You're sort of forced to express yourself. And if you don't have clarity of thought with the ideas that you're trying to present, there's just nowhere to hide. And so that forced engineers and managers and senior managers and everybody that worked at the company to really like refine their ideas and thoughts. And I thought that that was super effective. I think that the writing DNA is definitely a superpower within Amazon, and I absolutely loved it.
What about the flip side? What did you dislike about Amazon?
Two big things. One is the level granularity. There's essentially 4 levels for software developer at Amazon, from junior to principal engineer. Obviously, there's senior engineers and distinguished engineers as well, but like there's no staff engineer or senior staff engineer levels at the company. On the surface, that might look like it's a good thing. Like, why wouldn't you want to have higher standards for your engineering? But what I saw over the course of the nearly 2 decades that I worked there was that we lost a ton of people because they couldn't get to the level that they deserved. And so a ton of senior engineers, so the high end of senior engineer at Amazon, I think is very strong and is a solid staff engineer at most companies, if not senior staff engineer at most companies. And so why put yourself through that? Why would you have the highest performing people within your company leave because you've created this sort of like artificial level system? And so and I almost got bitten by it as well. It took me 8 years from senior engineer to get to principal. It was a really long and difficult process, and but I stuck through it, and I think I learned a lot. But I saw dozens of people that were really, really good moved to companies like Meta, like Google, got their levels sort of like right sized, and L6, L7, L8 engineers elsewhere.
That was one, the lack of level of granularity. That makes a lot of sense. What was the other one that you were going to mention?
The company has an intense focus on customers, which I actually really enjoy. I think it's a good North Star to continually ask yourself whether you're doing the right thing by your customer. But Amazon would constantly make decisions that would maximize and optimize that customer delight at the expense of things that were also very important. I worked in Prime Video for a number of years before I quit. We supported clients of Prime Video that were installed on TVs and old phones that were absolutely ancient. We might have an app version that's out there. It's very difficult to get them to upgrade, or it might be impossible to get them to upgrade because end of life on those devices, the manufacturers no longer supported them. And you would look at the metrics and you would be like, okay, cool. There's 26 people in Japan that are using this outdated Android version of Prime Video that we can't upgrade and is calling a bunch of sort of backend APIs that we want to deprecate. And we would bend over backwards to make sure that that would work. So on one side of this, it's very customer obsessed, right? It's we're serving those people, those 23 people, they were depending on us. On the other hand, right, you're spending non-negligible amounts of engineering resources, which amounts to quite a bit of money actually to keep up these older versions, and just take that example and multiply it by 1,000. And that's essentially what a lot of the client engineering teams were doing. And we would do calculations like, let's just buy these people new TVs and give them new Amazon Fire sticks or whatever, and then move them into the new generation of software. And no, it was just better. It was just the default mode was just just do the right thing by our customers. I think now we have more of a like a nuanced approach to phasing out other clients, but that's a very emblematic example of the types of things that we would do. And just at the end of the day, yes, we should do the right thing for our customers, but man, that was just a lot of effort, right, and a lot of difficulty, and you didn't really see what the impact was, right? I think, and I truly believe this. Amazon is not an evil company. They want nothing more than to delight customers. Like I truly believe that. Like at their core, everything that the company does is in service of the customer. What I think happens is that the people inside of the company get tunnel vision in the hopes of really satisfying their customers, and what they do from the outside, I think, is misinterpreted.
I joined Amazon in 2020 as an intern, and I interned there for 6 months. Since then, I've been working as a full time employee, first as an SD1 and now as an SD2. And I'm navigating my path towards an SD3 and IC career. It has been quite an exciting journey, and I've learned after talking with all my friends in the industry that the pace of Amazon is quite faster than what they have in their companies. So that's something which still excites me, and I think that's the way I learned working in my career. The ownership that is taught at Amazon is quite a lot compared to other organizations. For example, here, that's not my work is something which is rarely said. The lines between each roles are quite blurred. For example, we even take part in product vision, even the SD ones or interns take part.
Which I could imagine being both good and bad, because probably also
Yes.
stressful to do that. Is that right?
That's right, of course. Like sometimes I don't want to do some other kind of job, but my peers are doing it, and then I don't want to look bad because everyone else they went beyond their roles and talked to legal whether this does not have any legal concerns,
Mm.
etc., which I don't think is a lot part of my job. I am also an introvert, so I would like to focus on what I can do as like writing code and designs, that kind of thing, be something asking a lot from an IC.
Let's talk more about that. So that's one big thing, asking a lot from an IC to do a lot of work at Amazon. What else do you dislike about Amazon?
The on calls definitely I've seen are a lot more hectic than I've personally seen my friends at Microsoft. I'm not sure about other companies, but the on calls are at Amazon are quite heavy in general. It can vary definitely from team to team. For example, I recently switched to a different team, so the on call here is not that heavy as it was earlier. Earlier, the scale of our product was quite high. We were in retail, so our customers were actual retail customers who buy stuffs at Amazon. So the scale was huge. That's why our on calls were quite heavy.
What is most surprising about Amazon? If you had talked to yourself from 4 years ago, or if you talk to
Mhm.
someone who doesn't work at Amazon, what would they find surprising about your day-to-day life?
Okay, one thing that surprised me quite early in my career was that the leadership principles are taken quite seriously. It's not something which is just on the books. It also drives your feedback, your promotion, and your engineering skills at Amazon. So it is used as a tool to grade you at Amazon at every level, even in hiring or your promotions. So that was quite surprising to me because in many companies, it's only for the books that these are the good things, these
Yeah.
are the ideal traits you should have. But here it's actually something which after 1 or 2 years you get a hang of it, and it's like in your blood now that as an Amazonian, these are the traits you have now strong foundations of. So that was surprising when I joined, and it can surprise others as well.
I worked at Amazon for almost 9 years, from sort of middle of 2012 to beginning of 2021.
You've been at Amazon for a long time, 9 years, as both an IC and manager. Let's start with what you liked about Amazon.
Sure. So, I mean, I think that what I really liked at Amazon was the leadership roles that were there. I think that times people can misuse them, but in general terms, people all understood what the leadership principles meant, and it was something company wide. So even though it was a huge company, a lot of different types of work, and retail versus AWS was like a whole different world. Everyone had these leadership principles instilled and understood them. And that made it easier when decisions were being made to understand how you were orienting something. If you thought this is going to be really good for customers, that was an easy thing to say. Like for the customer focus aspect, this is going to be a huge win. Customers have this many complaints, or we're going to save much time, whatever it might be, and know that people would understand why you are focusing on that. So I think that that was one of my favorite things, but I always kind of anchor to people as well. Like the people that I worked with were really great, and that made the work a lot more enjoyable when you can count on people, and when you're teaching people, they're eager to learn. When you're learning from people, they're eager to teach. Like it really is a strong culture of people, and that was something that I really enjoyed.
Let's talk about the other side. What did you dislike about Amazon?
I think that one of the challenges, and I've seen this a lot of places, is how performance management is handled. I think that I ended up in sort of good places for me and the style of work that I did and style of leadership, and that was great. And I ended up generally getting good ratings, but it had more opacity than I think it needed to have. It changed frequently, that made it difficult both for managers who were doing assessments and everyone who was receiving assessments to keep up with like what the format was going to be or how it was going to work, how you present your work most effectively to sort of hit these points in this rating system. And I also think that as a manager, one of the more frustrating things was that really have final say. Like you would put together all of the documentation, make as strong of a case as you could, and you might sit on the sort of leveling and rating meetings with your org, but it always bubbles up from there, and it's always possible that a rating could change. And that is a very sort of hard thing as a manager, to like really believe that you're calibrated correctly and you've done the due diligence and you've done everything you can for a person. And I will say, like, this is normally down. Like, it's normally not that you're like surprised that someone 2 levels above you or whatever decided to raise one of your employees' ratings. It was almost always like pushing a rating down. And so then it's sort of contingent on you to then explain the rating to a person when you may not have actually, or it wasn't what you recommended. And so I think that that part of the process was really difficult. And I will say, like, while I was at Amazon, everyone watching may not be familiar with this, but there was a New York Times article that sort of discussed what people characterize as a like super brutal culture and how everyone was like beaten down and crying at their desks and stuff. And I'm like 100% sure the people that gave interviews were telling the truth and that was their experience. But I think it was a big company and that was probably isolated. Like I wouldn't have tolerated that in any org that I was in if people were being treated that way. But again, I believe them, but that shed some light or gave a lot of pressure on the company to respond essentially. And one of those ways was taking away what was considered like spot feedback or 360-degree feedback or whatever. People said like, this is weaponized. People will use this to put down others so their rating is better, stuff like that. And again, I believe that happened, but I don't think it was super widespread. And honestly, having those data points throughout the year of someone like dropping in and giving 360 feedback, whether it's constructive for you to improve something or it's, praising you for something, made it so much easier when it was calibration time for you to like pull that together and already have these data points or even promo time that people have given, either showing like, yes, you did grow based on this feedback, or you were doing a great job and got this recognition from someone. And so when that went away, it definitely took a lot of reorientation for people to themselves ask for feedback. And that doesn't fit everyone's personality or working style to like approach someone, especially someone more senior, and be like, oh, hey, can you give me or give my manager feedback about our interaction? And sometimes they're like, well, we like barely worked together. I looked at one code review, or I like sat in on a document review but didn't even like approve it or whatever. But people felt this pressure, like I've got to get this feedback from somewhere. And so it felt a little less organic when that sort of 360-degree feedback mechanism, anytime feedback, went away. But yeah, in general terms, it was that I would say scared of the rating process because either they didn't understand it well or it seemed very arbitrary.
What do other engineers who don't work at Amazon not realize about the company?
Especially amongst some of the bigger tech companies and whatever cohorts people use acronyms for, where it's like, oh, well, Amazon, it doesn't have as strong of engineering culture, or it's not as robust, or that, it's essentially the like, little brother of this cohort of companies, and like it's just not quite as good. And I think that that's super unfair and not really accurate. I think that what's true is that Amazon operates a very different kind of business, and as you mentioned earlier, with lower margins, and so that can look very different. The caliber of engineering there is super high, and I think sometimes that gets overlooked, and it's just like, oh, well, it's not as good as company X. It's like,
Yeah.
well, it probably is, but you probably don't know or don't see that. So
I started in 2021 and left recently in 2024.
So you were there for, more than 2.5 years, it sounds like. What did you enjoy about Amazon?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes without saying that Amazon has a bunch of really smart folks, lots of brilliant minds, and just working day to day with such great people, like such smart people, just takes you really to your next level, I would say. And the whole company is so engineering driven that you have really good processes just to ship stuff, making sure, for example, we were a large dependency for all the AWS services. So we had quite a significant responsibility in ensuring that we didn't break any console for any service. But there's so much infrastructure in place to ensure that you can ship fast and confidently. That's such a good feeling when you're developing and the next day you see your changes in production. And of course, also the impact that you can have. It's a little bit team dependent, of course, but all the products or the design system I worked on was used by literally hundreds of millions of people. And that's, of course, a great feeling.
What did you dislike about Amazon?
Amazon is a little bit peculiar what comes to workload, you can say. So there's almost an unwritten rule that if you achieve 100% of your goals, maybe you didn't aim high enough. And so I would say maybe the 80% is the good metric to achieve. It's an environment where everyone kind of pulls each other up, in which everyone is delivering at such a high bar. Even though I had great support, and I have to say I'm in Europe, I'm not sure exactly if it maps the same to the US, but I had a great team and manager that supported work-life balance 100%. However, there's still big pressure on delivering and achieving your goals, which are often very ambitious. But yeah, this, on the other hand, it also makes you very much in control of your career if you the skills and are able to apply yourself. And what I mean by that is if you are given the opportunities and at a certain level, it becomes more important that you have enough scope and impact on your work. But if you are given the opportunities, it's really up to you to take it and deliver and get recognized for it. So it kind of has two edges of the sword, if you will.
Okay, thanks to all the people who gave me feedback about life at Amazon. There were a few people who showed up on camera, but also several dozen people I talked to more informally. And so to wrap up the video, I want to share my analysis of the pros and cons of working at Amazon based on all the data. First, on the good parts of Amazon, Amazon has 16 leadership principles, or LPs, that are taken very seriously. So as you navigate different decisions or you're doing your work, people really do understand and bring up these leadership principles as a way to resolve arguments and drive consensus. They're not just words on a wall, they're actually really understood by the employees. Second, Amazon has a really strong writing culture. There's the idea that you have to do a 6-page document when you're presenting something in a meeting, and then people come in and they silently just read this document that you put together. And people repeatedly told me that this really encourages clarity of thought and brevity, which is extremely valuable to make high quality decisions. And it's quite unique compared to a lot of companies which are much more PowerPoint or slide driven. And third, the Amazon brand name is very strong. At this point, everyone in the world has heard of Amazon. It's a massive company. It employs 1 million people. And so working there gives you credibility and it opens up opportunity in a way that working at a much smaller company would not be able to. On the flip side, there are some negative parts of working at Amazon. A lot of people in the survey told me that the LPs, the leadership principles, can be weaponized. So, for example, things like customer obsession or bias for action, it can lead to a really intense, fast paced environment, which could cause burnout. And there's another person who said that because of those two principles in particular, a lot of people at Amazon are short tempered. And being nice to someone is actually unexpected. It's not a normal thing. That just sounds like a unpleasant place to work. One of the most prominent complaints I heard about Amazon was their obsession with frugality, which was the idea of accomplish more with less. A lot of people told me that this idea would be taken to the extreme, where it would verge on stupidity. And for example, if you had a laptop that was several years old and really needed upgrading, it would require tons and tons of effort and documentation to get an upgrade for your laptop or a certain piece of equipment. And it would also get manifested oftentimes in Amazon not paying as well as other tier one big tech companies. And finally, a third complaint I heard from a bunch of people at Amazon is that there is a sink or swim culture where you have to do a lot more than what your job entails, and you either accomplish it or you get managed out or you have a poor performance rating. And that could be rewarding in order to be able to rise to the occasion, but it can also lead to burnout and a lot of anxiety. Finally, I'll mention one more thing, which is mixed. There's both good and bad parts I heard about it, which is the engineering talent and the engineering density at Amazon. There are undoubtedly amazing engineers I talked to. Some of them showed up in this video, and they told me that a lot of the engineering complexity, a lot of people in the public who don't work at Amazon, they don't even realize it. They don't see it because Amazon is such a massive company, a million employees, that they're innovating and building systems that are quite complicated, but they just haven't yet been public. At the same time, a few people in the survey told me that the talent density at Amazon is simply not that high, especially among the more junior folks. One person in particular said that during his time at Amazon, they hired a bunch of junior and mid level folks, and he found that broadly, this set of more junior folks lacked the required technical skills, curiosity, and a growth mindset. Okay, thanks to everyone who took part in this. Amazon is actually the most represented company we have on Taro, with thousands of Amazon engineers who are active on the Taro app to grow their career. We actually wrote a really detailed guide about performance review and promotion. How does that work at Amazon with some very surprising facts? I'll leave a link for that in the description. Let me know what other company you are looking for. Join Taro. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.